All right, so today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about another stats report that we're going to write. And this one, what we're going to be working on is something called an inference. Now, if you're going to make an inference about something, it's an educated guess based on what's happened in the past, right? Or based on statistical data. So, for example, I might look at the frequency that students do their homework and see if doing more homework means they get a better grade on the test. Right? Okay? So, we're going to talk about some of the processes today. We're just going to introduce what this looks like and talk about and remind you of the PPDAC cycle, that plan, purpose, etc. cycle that we've looked at before in some previous papers. So we're going to do a broad introduction today. So most of the work we're going to do, again, is going to be from Education Perfect. You have your book. You can use some additional exercises there as well if you like writing them down in the book. But I'm going to give you assignments in Education Perfect because I want to be able to see that you're working and that you're doing these things. Yeah? So that way I can't monitor your book as well. All right, hold on just one moment. Let me get there. So here we go. So again, we're talking about making an inference. So this is an internal. It's worth 4 credits. It will be graded very thoroughly, though. So you need to make sure that you have every piece of this information that you need. You need to make sure that you are not borrowing information from an exemplar, that this is data that you chose. Okay? Now, you will get a week to work on this, so it'll be one of those open book, work on it on your own kind of things. You'll get some class time to do it. You can work on it outside of class, but you need to make sure that it is indeed your work. Be careful. Okay, so let's just talk about what a formal inference, or what an inference internal is, or what you're going to be doing with inference. They're calling this formal inference. It's not really true. You're going to do a formal inference paper if you take stats in year 13. This is an informal one. So just call it inference. Don't say formal inference. So what we're going to do is we're going to analyze some statistical data about a particular population. So you're going to be given some data, just like you were in the others, and you're going to pose a question, and then you're going to use that data to see if you can answer the question based on the information that you're given. Okay? So you'll be given all of the information that you need to make this work. So here we go. From my analysis of the sample, it's safe to conclude that people who complete the 2.9 inference lessons on EP tend to achieve better grades in their assessment among Year 12 students in New Zealand in 2018. So again, the sentences are very formulaic, right? But, so there's not going to be so much that you can do to make it your own, right? Don't get carried away. You don't want to think, well, it'll sound better if I use 10 sentences here instead of 5. That's not true. Just make sure that you're using your own information and not numbers. And if there's some phrasing that you might not normally use words that you understand, right? Use your own language to make it work. But again, there are some key phrases that I'm going to point out to you that are non-negotiable. If you don't use this language, then you're not going to achieve. Okay, so be careful. Don't try to make it so much your own that you forget to write what you're supposed to write. Okay. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using, some statistical data and analysis to look at 2 sets of data, and then we're going to ask some kind of comparative question. So, for example, here we have the birth weight of babies based on whether their mothers smoked or not. Right? So we've got our box and whisker plots, and you would normally have your statistical data here because this was created using NZ Grapher, which is another reason I want to use Education Perfect instead of your book. Your book does not use NZ Grapher, where this does, so that's what you'll be using. So everything that you see here will look like what you're going to be working with. Normally, again, you would have your statistical data here in red. Remember that when we did some graphs before? So you're going to be carrying out a comparative statistical investigation, and then you're just going to write a report of your findings. And again, remember, these reports need to be very formulaic. The only place that you really get any leeway is when you're writing about your insights. What did you see? And what can you conclude from what you saw? Okay? And then we're going to look at how to use NZ-Grapher to gather all the information that we need. Okay? So, what is a statistical inference? A statement about a sample based on analysis of the population the sample came from? Or a statement about a population? Statement about a population based on the analysis of a sample? Or a statement about a sample based on the analysis of the sample? So is it about a sample or about a population? We are inferring something about the population. Now, are we going to use the entire population to get that? No. So it's a statement about a population based on the analysis of a sample from the population. Okay? Right? Yeah, and you're going to be doing this over again in a moment too. I'm going to assign this to you. Okay, so you're going to answer some questions based on this so that you understand exactly what it is that you're doing. Okay? So you might want to take some notes. So let's talk about the task. What it is you're actually wanting to have as an end product. What is it that we're going to do? So it's really important that you understand each part of these because you're going to need to make sure you have everything in your report that you need. Okay? Again, we can copy and paste a template, then you're going to write it yourself. Okay? So first, you're going to pose an appropriate question that can be answered using the data provided comparing two groups of population. So you saw that question about, or the sets of data about the mothers who smoke, the birth weights of their babies, right? So you could ask questions about, such as, do the birth weights of children, is it affected by whether or not the mother smokes, right? So it's a comparative thing for two categories. You're going to select random samples, and we'll talk about how to do that when we look at we're going to do a little review of NZ-Grapher, and NZ-Grapher can choose your samples for you. But you just have to tell it what you want. Okay? We're going to select and use the appropriate displays and measures. You're not really going to select and use, you're going to use. I'm going to tell you exactly which ones I want you to use, and those will be the ones you use. Okay? You're going to talk about sample distributions by comparing their features. So, in other words, you're going to look at the graphs that you get and talk about some of the features of them and specific ones. You're going to discuss sampling variability, including the variability of estimates. Sampling variability, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. This is one of the key areas that you must make sure that you understand. It's going to be a very fixed sentence as far as when you're talking about sampling variability, but you can get a little bit of your own insight into this part of the report as well. You can, in other words, you can talk about what's happening. So there's going to be one sentence that is non-negotiable, but then the rest of it you can write. Then you're going to make your inference. Based on the information that I'm seeing, I can infer that babies who smoke shouldn't ride in planes. I don't know. Who cares? All right? So, conclude your investigation by answering your question. So you're going to answer your own question. Yeah? All right. So they're going to give you some questions based on those. Now, talking about the marking of it, to get merit, you have to use statistical methods to make an inference. So that's just the copy and paste part. And here with statistical insight, in other words, you need to talk about what's happening in context and what you're seeing happen. Okay? If you just do the copy and paste thing and put in exactly what you need, then you probably get the merit, right? As long as your analysis is exactly correct and you're not swiping numbers from some exemplar. But in order to get excellence, you need to really talk about what it is that you're seeing there and what you can conclude from that. We're going to look at lots of examples. So it's, again, not as if you have to suddenly become some statistical expert. You just need to be able to use what you know and what you see to be able to describe what's happening, not just fill in the blanks. Okay? So each section can be written at different levels. And they're going to talk to you through some different pieces that you can look for. You can look at that if you would like. Okay? All right. So we're going to look at some data that is going to be given to you. You're going to form a question based on that data. You're going to choose a sample of data to use. Then you're going to analyze that data and draw a conclusion. Okay? And all of that should sound very familiar because it is that statistical inquiry cycle, or PPDAC, that we talked about in the past. So let's just briefly remind you of that cycle. Okay. So here we are. First, we have a problem. We plan to find out a solution. We gather our data. We do our analysis. We write our conclusion, which may lead to another question, which is something it better lead to, because otherwise you won't get as strong in excellence, right? Because remember, every conclusion should lead to more questions, right? So if birth weight is affected by smoking, I wonder what other behaviors could affect birth weight, perhaps, okay? Or is it the thing that affects birth weight most? So, leading to different questions. So let's just run through these. Here we go. Here's our problem. We want to find out who usually exercises more out of boys or girls. All right? Keep it simple. This is part of what you're going to surmise in your plan as you go. You can have lots of questions, but you need to make sure that the question is about a population, and it better be the specific population that we give you, right? Don't ask a different question. 2 specific groups, very well-defined groups. You have to list your variable, talk about your variables. So here, like, for example, they're saying the daily minutes spent commuting. State the feature being investigated. In other words, what piece of statistical analysis are you going to use? And it should be the median. Don't even worry about it being anything else. It should be the median. So you need to make a note of that. The thing that you're going to be comparing is the median. And you're going to see that question again, and we'll talk about it. It'll give you the pieces. And you need to indicate a suspected outcome. In other words, a hypothesis. What do you think is going to happen? Okay? Or what might happen? So, do you think the fitness level of girls is greater than the fitness level of boys? Okay? So what do you think? Okay, so here's a question. It's got all the pieces. I wonder if the median, that's the feature you're comparing, does not vary. So that's going to be the same thing. Number of minutes spent exercising daily, that's the variable that you're investigating. So it needs to be clearly stated. What is it that I'm investigating? Then here's the first one, by males. So that's your first group. Is greater than, that's what the suspected outcome is. You think they exercise more? Do you think they exercise less? Whatever it is. Then the median, remember, you need to, anytime you're talking about these, you need to repeat them. Of minutes spent exercising by females, so that's your second group, among year 12 students in New Zealand in 2017. Look how specific they are. Year 12 students in New Zealand in 2017. So you need the who, what, when, and where of your population. Okay? You only have to mention it once, but you need to be very specific. Okay? All right, so be very specific and detailed. As far as the plan, okay? So you formulated your problem. Now you need to formulate your plan. So we know our population. So we're just going to look at some data samples. Don't worry about any of this part. Here we go. We're going to basically give you your plan. Your plan is that you're going to import your data into NZ Grapher, and you're going to organize your data using that software. Okay? But you need to talk about it. My plan. I will import the data into NZ Grapher. I will then choose a sample based on blah, 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 etc. And we're going to have a whole section on the plan, so don't think you need to know all of that right now. Okay? You're going to gather your data. Okay? You need to make sure that you have all of your data included. So you'll see you're going to gather the data. You're just going to have 2 pieces. You're not going to take the entire thing. You're going to copy and paste from the data that we send you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to email you all a data set you're going to choose the two pieces of information that you need based on what you need for NZ-Grapher. You're going to copy that, paste it into NZ-Grapher. Couldn't be much easier. Okay. You're going to look for it and see if there are any pieces of information that you need to take out. So in this case, -5, you cannot have negative exercise time. They may throw information in there for you just to make sure. So all you need to do is just scan it, make sure that all of your numbers make sense. You might also have something here that may not make sense, right? It has to be only the things that you're comparing. So you might have data with 3 categories. You're going to have to kick one of them out, right? So be careful. Okay. 280 minutes a day. Sounds a little fishy, right? So look in and see if you need to clean up your data. Then you're going to do the analysis. Now, when you're doing analysis, you're going to first have a specific graph that we're going to use, and it's not going to ever change. It's going to be a box and whisker plot. You're going to have 2 box and whisker plots, and again, NZ-Grapher is going to draw those for you, and then you'll just do some analysis based on those. So it'll look like this. You have one on top of the other so that you can compare them. Okay. You're also going to see that it's going to put the summary statistics for each one off to the side. You're going to make sure you check that box so that you have those numbers, because you don't want to have to try to read those numbers from the boxes and the whiskers. Okay? So make sure. Then last thing you're going to do, in your analysis, you're going to be given some specific items that we want talked about. Spread, center, and of course the median, because you're wondering if the median values of these two things are different. So you're going to talk about the median, and we'll talk about those. They are going to be very specific. And then finally, you're going to write a conclusion, making sure that in the conclusion, you always talk about everything in context, right? We're going to go through a whole section on conclusions. So you're going to go through some of these. You're answering your question. Right? And when you do answer that question, there should be lots of repetition. You need to pretty much restate your question with a conclusion at the top. Okay? You need to make sure you include all of the information about what it is you're measuring, the median, what your groups are, what the variable is that you're measuring, etc. And the who, what, when, and where. Okay? Sound good? Super easy. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you these 2 Education Perfect assignments for you to go through, and you can walk through those just to make sure that you understand each part of the plan, and then we will spend a little time looking at NZ-Grapher and doing a little tutorial there to show you what exactly you'll be using on that side of things. Okay?